I'm co-chair Jonathan Judge, and I'll let Dwayne, our other co-chair, introduce himself. If he's a little frozen right now.
Dwayne Joseph, co-chair of youth. Yeah, sorry about that. You can hear me and see me. Dwayne Joseph, co-chair of the.
Cool. I I don't know. I mean, I would like to probably go with what we would normally do. Is if anybody here, let's see, how many of our board members are here? It's sort of hard to see. Let's see here. We've got Glenn Wolin, Ed Sen, Nikki Levinson Angulo, Ina Savgir, Shahid Khan, of course, our district manager, Sean Campbell, and Anya Hoyer, community coordinator for the district manager's office, Dawn Marie Walker, Florencia Changageta, and I'm trying to see if I'm missing anybody else who's on the board on the call. I just want to thank all of the board members here tonight for joining us in the conversation. So to kick things off, two very important items of business for us. One is going to be coming up with a real plan of action and finalizing it for the Youth Leadership Council that we've been talking about for quite some time. And then coming up with an answer for how we want to do this year's CB14 Youth Conference, which, as many of you know, for the last, I mean, it'll be 14 years now, right? 14 years? 14 years. We've been gathering businesses and city agencies and nonprofits to meet with I mean, almost like 80, 90 organizations and nonprofits and businesses to meet with several hundred teens a year for 3 hours in one space to find jobs, internships, and other opportunities. It's been sort of a flagship of both our committee and community board 14 to have done this. And a number of community boards have actually followed suit and have started to do similar things like this. We're very proud of what we've been able to do over these years for the youth conference. And but obviously we have some challenges about doing it the way we used to for this year, at least for the foreseeable part of the year of 2021. So we're going to kick off the conversation that way. Dwayne, I know that you and Sean had spent some time talking about some details, and I don't know if I think maybe it'd be more appropriate for you to sort of take it off from here, pick it up from here.
So, and let me know if I'm freezing. You guys having a little bit of connectivity issue. So we've been about a youth leader for a few months now since you know, I think prior to the end of the last board cycle, which was June of 2020, or prior to June actually. I think we've discussed having we are and right now, in my opinion, and I'm hoping that is that we start to engage with the young people by opening up some sort of portal for them to apply and connect. So in that vein, and as Sean has been working with the New York City Service to figure out, is it New York City Service, Sean, or is it, am I saying it right? Is it Vista?
No, I think.
Am I correct there, Sean?
I think it's just New York City. Actually, I put their link in the chat. NewYorkCityService.org is what facilitates the youth councils.
Right. Looking at that to see the practice on how to young folks to collect their data. So at this stage, Sean, I would just, if you can just give us an update of what you found so far. I know we've spoken, we ideally would like to get this rolled out in the next month or so.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of laughing before we all jumped on a little bit earlier because I'm looking through my folder of notes and I just keep kind of like writing the same notes over and over again. And it just feels like if we're going to get a nascent group they're off the ground before the end of this meeting cycle, we just need to act now. And we've had several conversations about how to move forward, but I feel like we'll be fine flying by the seat of our pants if we just kind of get an application up there. And I had, some language for an invitation, but the application could go on our website. I think that there's a fairly graceful way to link it to a youth conference, so that this group, if we have enough young people, they could even fill up one, some time in that youth conference, having a conversation about, their takeaways. We could do it on like a real time kind of survey with them. But if we get an application up and a certain, in a, a 4 or 5, anywhere from 5 to 10 young people respond, I think that's enough to get the ball rolling. And just to remind people who've been in these conversations and to tell people who have not yet been in the conversation, the vision is sort of having a sort of like a youth community board that would bring youth perspective to all of the committees. So each member of the youth committee would have a liaison to one of our standing committees. So that would bring a youth perspective in, and then also they could bring our standing committee meetings into their youth group. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's still very loosey goosey, but the idea is just to bring young people. Oh, and the people who would be eligible it would follow the NYC service guidelines of being between the ages of 14 and 21, which is, I think, the same ages we use for the youth conference anyway. Applications could be on the NYC service website and on our website, and we could push out applications at the same time that we're pushing out information about the youth conference itself. And then once the group gathers, I think we talked also about giving them a great deal of autonomy, and maybe there would be, some interaction with either the youth services chair or some executive committee members at first. But at some point, the longer term vision is for them to have an autonomous group that kind of rolls on its own steam, that writes its own mission statement, maybe does a subset of bylaws. And that then interfaces with the community board committees as a whole. Is that enough, or is that too much? Did that help at all?
No,
Well,
I think that helps quite a bit.
No, I was actually going to say that I think this would be a great opportunity to hear from, I think, our other committee members and board members, just because, some of the conversations have been more concentrated at the top on some of these aspects of it. So I think maybe any questions or concerns from the other committee members, maybe we could hear those, try to flesh out some of the, I don't know, maybe the things that we haven't talked about enough.
Sorry, Jonathan, before board members jump in, I just want to recognize that Andy Toledo from the Civic Engagement Commission is on this call with us too. And Andy, I don't know when you jumped on, and but maybe there's some guidance or input that you would like to offer, and I suspect the co-chairs would welcome that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us tonight, Andy.
For sure.
Thank you for having me. Do you want me to go ahead now, or do you want me to? I'll defer to the other board.
Dwayne, if you have no problem, I'd love to hear more from Andy.
Sure.
We have a great opportunity. We should hear.
No, absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. This is a great opportunity. I had met with District Manager Sean Campbell roughly about a year ago at the January District Service Cabinet meeting right before COVID. And that was my first time introducing the agency to Sean and to the other agency members that were there. If I'll just give a quick little refresher course if no one's familiar with the Civic Engagement Commission. But if you recall, back in 2018, the Civic Engagement Commission was on the ballot referendum. That was the year where Also on the ballot referendum was to place term limits on community board membership. So that's how the civic engagement was created. Roughly about 70% of New York City voters voted to create the Civic Engagement Commission. And we have, four charter mandates. One is to provide more technical support and trainings to community boards. I'm sure some of you had probably attended some of the parliamentary rules and trainings procedure workshops back in early August of last year. And if you did, thank you very much for attending. That's something that we want to continue to have, those workshops and trainings for community board members. We also, our other charter mandates is to create the citywide participatory budgeting program, which is unfortunately right now because of COVID is totally suspended until further notice. The other piece is also to provide more language access to New York City voters. This past election season, we had over roughly 300 interpreters throughout the city of New York at the poll sites, providing language interpretations at the poll sites, which was really which is really monumental for us because we're a very small agency of only 8 folks, and we had to coordinate over 300 interpreters throughout the city of New York, with over 100, I believe it was 127 poll sites throughout the city. So that was a pretty big lift for us as a small team. And lastly, the last charter mandate for us is to really look at the city of New York and how we can strengthen democracy and increase civic participation throughout the city of New York, with a particular lens at youth, looking at folks of limited English, looking at the LGBTQ community, looking at the military community as well, and really trying to get a lot of those folks that tend to be out of the political process, but also to try to get them into the fold and joining more civic participation in the city of New York. So that's the CEC in a nutshell. I did get the tail end of what Sean was explaining roughly about providing the youth autonomy. Because of COVID, we as an agency, we were not able to hire a youth director to really create a lot of youth programming and services for youth. But one of the early conversations that we had around youth and that particular work stream for CEC was to really put youth in a position of leadership and autonomy. Like that's a very important word for us. To really could also create a YLC for CEC that will provide the commissioners at CEC guidance on, what's the pulse around youth, right? Like what are youth talking about, right? What are some of the issues that they're experiencing at schools? What policy decisions that they would like to see implemented, and really put them in a position to be of a greater voice to us as CEC, as an agency. And so for us, one of the major roles that we've been really pushing is to really get more youth to serve on community boards. As you know, a couple of years ago, the city council passed legislation to lower the age of community board membership. So now youth as young as 16 years of age can serve on community boards. Also, really getting some of our city agency partners to also really encourage youth to join neighborhood advisory boards. That's under the Department of Youth and Community Development. Neighborhood advisory boards play a major role in providing funding in low-income communities. The other piece is also getting the Department of Education to help us really get more word out. Community education councils. That's another civic engagement piece where many parts of our city is very low participation, and I believe you can now serve on a CEC, I believe, age of 18. Also, the New York City Health and Hospitals, they have community advisory boards. So if anyone is interested in, health policy, that's another civic engagement opportunity. And also, if any, youth that are interested in public safety, joining your precinct community councils. NYPD has precinct community councils that are. I think that it's, especially now with how, community policing, how it's such a hot button, but getting more youth to serve on that process, I think would be an incredible win for the city of New York. So really looking at all those civic engagement opportunities that are available and really getting all these city agencies on board and getting youth to be in those positions of leadership. Those are very strong positions of leadership. And I always encourage youth, especially with community boards, if you want to learn how city government works at the most local level, join your local community board. I mean, that's how you would really get hands on. And I tell youth all the time that, especially for youth around 16 years of age, they're probably like a sophomore or a junior in high school. It's one of the great ways to really improve your college application because that is truly a hands-on leadership position. So, that's what we've been looking at. Hopefully, once COVID, we're able to hire someone that can really focus on youth programming for CEC, can really get that off the ground. But that's generally where we're at right now with that with youth. One last thing I'll mention is that we also, because of participatory budgeting, we've created a youth-led participatory budgeting program. If you get a chance, go to participate.nyc.gov. I did send out all the information to all the community board offices. But we're doing right now, as we currently speak, we're hosting a very small participatory budgeting program that's youth-led. It's not a city budget, it's actually our own civic engagement budget. I believe we set aside $20,000 for youth to vote on particular budgeting programs throughout the city of New York. So I'll put on the chat, I'll put the website, and I please encourage members to look at the site. And thank you very much. Look at the site and yeah, openings are still, we still have openings now. So if there's youth that want to participate and chime in on budgeting priorities for their district, please encourage them. And I'll entertain any questions.
Any quick questions for Andy? Because I think Andy, everything you just said should be feeding into sort of what our plan of action should be for our youth council in this role. But if there are any particular questions for Andy about any of the specific new programs under the Civic Engagement Commission, specifically geared toward youth, we can field a couple of questions now, if anyone has.
Yes. I would like to know. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Florencia.
Hi, John. I would like to know, will the youth be participating in the ranked voting? That now that they're having ranked voting, will they be out informing like the older folks and helping those who aren't really, aware of what?
Unfortunately, the educational piece of the ranked choice voting, that's under the Campaign Finance Board. That's the agency that's charged with educating New York City voters. We don't play a role at all in that piece, but we just did a ranked choice voting workshop with community boards in Queens with the Queensborough President's Office. So that's something that Campaign Finance Board wants to also do a workshop in all the 5 boroughs. So, unfortunately, I can't answer for Campaign Finance Board.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Florencia. Thanks, Andy. Any other questions specific to the youth participatory budgeting program? Anything specific to any of the other Civic Engagement Commission programs? I'm sure this won't be the last time Andy will ever be involved with our community board, so you'll get other chances to ask questions, I'm sure, if you don't have them tonight. And of course, you could always email the board office if you have any questions. I'm sure there'll be a lot of information on our website too, because I know Anya and Sean make sure that website has every piece of information that could possibly be useful and puts it in a nice, easy way for everybody to get to, and it's fantastic. So look at the website if you didn't get a question that answered tonight. I'm sure the website will have an answer probably. So again, thank you, Andy. And to Andy's point on a lot of this, I started at the community board at age 17 volunteering, pushed my way in because I couldn't find a summer job. And on a fluke, I said, let me go and see if I could get involved in my community board. Maybe I could build them a website because it was 2003. How could they not have a website in 2003? And too many years later, I don't even want to do the math right now, but it's 2021. And look where I am. And I have to vouch for a lot of what Andy is saying. And I think the presence of mind that the city sort of has now, that a lot of the things that can be made better in our city requires, I think, from an early age, the understanding that everything we do in our community, in city government, state government, even at the federal level, it's citizen participation. If you're not involved, if you don't get that that's how things change, the things that you don't like, the injustices that you see, that's the only way for those things to get resolved. If everyone is pitching in and understands that that's actually where the energy should go, right? It shouldn't go to just resentment and frustration and throwing up your hands saying, well, the system's broken, but who's going to fix it? Who's going to fix it? You and everybody else who sees the problem. And knowing that these mechanisms, like the community board, the precinct councils, now that we have participatory budgeting, there are just so many venues and forums that a little bit of time sacrifice for civic activism and engagement just can go such a long way to making a lot of the things that seem unmanageable and insurmountable actually possible to transform for the better. So I'm living proof of that, and I didn't come in through a program, but that means it's that much more important that we do build programming around making our teens understand this is what a democratically elected Republican form of government looks like, and we need everybody, and we need everyone to respect that the process is here, but it's only good and produces good outcomes if we utilize it. So I don't know. I was inspired, Andy. I went on my soapbox there for a second. But it's such a key thing that you really highlighted there for us, which maybe it's easy for us to kind of miss that point in the fray. So,
Jonathan, may I ask Andy a question? I just want to know if there are practical ways that CEC might be able to support Community Board 14 in the establishment of a youth council. And also to remind you, we don't appoint our own board members. So I hope you're preaching to the borough president's office as well.
to everybody who might be watching this. Yeah.
Yeah, Sean, in any way we can help out, we're open to any way. I mean, whatever way you want to lead.
Because you mentioned a couple of things. I mean, the way that we've talked about this youth conference really does provide enough or takes advantage of some pretty neat dovetails that occur say between the community board and the precinct council. We have a public safety committee. So if a member were interested in public safety issues as a youth member and served on the youth council, and also then, would have those easy ties to PD, and PD happens to also have a YLC. And then you mentioned HHC and their CAB, and HHC also has a YLC. So it just seems like those dots are pretty easily, it seems like it'd be easy to connect them. And that's why I'm not really worried about if the board wanted to move forward with just getting an application up and just starting to gather young people in, and then just start to charge them with like having conversations and bringing their perspective into committee and into the greater community. I think we're ready to do that. And I don't feel like we need a really super put together infrastructure. I go back to the idea of flying by the seat of our pants. I think it will come together just by pressing go.
I agree with you, Sean. I think what we've noticed here at the CEC with a lot of the conversations that we've had with a lot of our sister agencies, we're kind of shocked when we ask them, like, what is your outreach plan? Like, how do you get the word out? And what I find is that a lot of agencies are just not doing really good outreach. And I think that's where the CEC could really come in. One of the things that I've always preached about CEC, and I hope that we're able to do is that we become like a central repository of all this civic opportunities and possibilities. So where, instead of having to navigate, DYCD's website or, navigate, NYPD's website, you could just now go to the CEC and see all the applications that are available in the city. but I think that what getting all these agencies to understand that and be in line with having these YLCs all talking to each other. What I've always liked to see, and I would hope that maybe with this new borough presidents and next mayor and new city council members, is that I would like to see all these YLCs all come together and probably have, like, at the end of the year or maybe during the year, have all the students and all the youth actually work on like an actual workplace challenge where they're doing investigating or researching a city agency, or having them just do something tangible instead of just meeting monthly and just shooting the breeze, but actually having real policy discussions. So, like, maybe looking at homelessness in the city of New York, right? Having all these different YLCs, and then but look at then you have the YLC for New York City, the New York City Health and Hospitals, right? Like, looking at it from looking at homelessness from the lens of a health perspective, and then looking poverty from a public safety issue as well. Like having all these YLCs all working together, and then having like an actual paper that they could then forward to the city of New York. I would love to see that happen one day, and really having them do real work.
Yeah. I think we also have talked about the Community Board 14 YLC taking over the planning and the all of the work of putting the youth council together. A youth conference organized by a youth council, I think, is a great ultimate goal. Yeah, it's awesome. I also, and I'm sorry to the co-chairs, but I'm not sure if you know that we also have been joined by Katie Carroll from the Vista program, who's on with us too. I just want to make sure that's who Katie Carroll is when you see her name.
It's so much easier to do that in person when we can see everyone at a table. I got 4 screens at a time. I'm sorry if I missed anybody who's a guest. I think also we have another person. First of all, Katie, thank you for joining us tonight. We're very happy to have you here. I do see now your hand is raised, Nikki. I'll come to you in 1 second. And then we have Anna Boroshenko. Is that correct? And I believe she also had, she's with DOE, and she was talking about an internship program, a remote internship program. We'd love to hear a little bit more from you, Anna, in a little bit. We'll get back to you just shortly. But we want to thank our guests here tonight for joining us and enriching the conversation about the various ways we can help the youth in our community. I don't know if, Sean, by that introduction, if there was something you had in mind for Katie to contribute at this moment, or if we could wait until after the official business on the agenda.
She's not on the agenda. I just wanted to acknowledge that she's here, but I'll defer to the chairs on whether you want to invite her to raise any points of view or programs she wanted to share.
You just sort of, Dwayne, you tell me what you think here. Just sort of like.
I just want to quickly, if we may, I know Nikki may have had a question or some comment of Andy's the introduction. So if we could address that, or if it has questions around what Andy said or presented, and then we can move on to the next thing, if that's okay.
That works for me.
All right, Nikki.
Hi. Thank you to the visitors to the call. I'm nowhere in my apartment seems to be good for this. It's either noisy or dark, so let's go with this middle place. So I just wanted to add a comment. I really like this idea in general. I agree with Sean and sort of what Andy said. Like, let's not kill ourselves setting up any crazy infrastructure. Just trying to get people interested. But, and I think I said this the last time we discussed this topic, I want to give you a learning from my organization, which is a youth organization, which super sucks at involving the youth. And I wanted to, we're literally doing this right now, and I can see the train wreck it's causing. So we're a study abroad organization. also, I want to add that if we can send kids on study abroad during a pandemic, we can most certainly find a way to do a youth conference. So that's also my outlook on that. It's complicated, but you can do it. You have to do it differently. But regarding this, so we also were trying to have like our young volunteers, we have thousands of them around the world, and like get them involved somehow. And there are two mistakes that we made that I would say we should try and avoid in a community board level. The first is we did not ensure that these young people understood the role that the international headquarters plays in the life of the organization. So it is critically important that when you get young, enthusiastic, energetic people involved, that they like actually know how things work and what the organization can't do and what it can do, but also what it can't, so that kids don't come in there like, wait, I thought I was gonna like change the city, right? So that's the first thing, is you have to be so clear, like have a really great onboarding about what a community board does, what it doesn't do, and what its role in the ecosystem of the city is. And sometimes people don't like to do that, right? Because you want everybody to think you're super cool and you can do everything. But if you're not very honest about that, you will have very disengaged, frustrated kids who drop out after like a few times. That's the first thing. So we didn't do that, and now we're paying the price. And the other thing is, even when we were all talking, we can all see the added value of having young people involved in the community board, right? We said things like, oh, we'll get their perspective, we'll get their da-da-da-da. But we also need to understand what they want to get out of it and come up with projects that fulfill that and have a pretty clear plan of action. The situation I have on my hands, I have this horrible meeting on Thursday that I'm preparing for, where we got all these kids together. They came up with these super cool projects, but they didn't understand what the company can actually do. So now they have all these ideas that we can't really help them with. And the CEO has to have a call with them and say like, ugh. You know, so I think you just need, those are the two things, is really be clear about what a community board is and really have a plan of activity that fulfills their wants and needs just as much as it fills ours. I think you don't need any infrastructure to figure those two things out. Sorry, that was long-winded. I apologize.
No, thank you, Nikki, because I think that actually is, I mean, you've got real world insight on something like this that I don't know if anyone else here has to that extent, which if they do, then we'd love to hear from everybody who does. But thank you for that, because I think that did address two key things, because we are there is something sort of just still very high level about our concept here. I do personally agree that a good way to rein it in is to say it's about the youth conference, and that we could give a significant amount of discretion and purview over the theme of the youth conference, what maybe some workshops are, maybe it could be on homelessness, if that's what the young people on the youth council want to tackle. If they want to tackle jobs, if they want to tackle other issues, we could give them a fair amount of room to do that and find organizations, show them how to do it, provide them mentorship, because I think one thing we're leaving out here is autonomy, but okay, 16, 17-year-olds don't necessarily have anything to base off of how to do this type of stuff. So I think the mentorship role, letting them figure it out, but understand what the options are and what other people have done in such similar situations, I think that's going to be really important. That's going to be a critical role, not only for the whole community board if we do this, but I think particularly with youth services committee members and co-chairs in mind, as playing a primary, sort of being a primary mentor role in that regard. So I think those are all valid points. We have to make sure they know what the parameters are, that they can appreciate, understand it, to make it efficient and also rewarding. We don't want anyone wasting their time or feeling like it was a waste of time. And I think also making sure that that we're clear on like, okay, here's a tool, here are the tools you can use. Here's what a youth conference can look like. Here's what we can do with it. Now tell us how you would like to put it together within these constraints. And I think that's just an incredibly valuable experience overall. So
if I can add just one more thing to that, like I actually think you could do something as broad as involving the youth council. If they didn't, not even, I think it's wonderful for them to have a discrete project like the conference, but I actually think you could even involve them, just say like, we want every committee to have a youth representative, as long as you explain to them exactly what that meant and what they could accomplish. And I think the other trick is you would need to get the committee chairs to dedicate to making those kids feel that they had a role, because otherwise they might just be like a scared teenager in a corner.
Nikki, that is actually something that we did address back in the fall at the first meeting, and we had somebody from the YLC from the Vista program presenting to us, and there is going to have to be enough buy-in from it. If it's not a committee co-chair, at least a committee member to sort of be the tag-in on who the mentor is for that committee. And I think that in order to make this a uniquely community board driven youth council, there does have to be an expectation. I mean, sort of even mocked up an invitation / announcement / application that says, you know, community boards are the most local level of government and the liaison between city agencies and community. Your voice will help us identify issues affecting youth, et cetera, et cetera. And then it says Community Board 14 has 5 standing committees and seeking your participation on one of those committees. And so my vision of the application is that sort of like we poll board members for the ones they're most interested in. And then each, yeah, so I think that that's really important, but I hear you on managing expectations. It's, you know, it's kind of the name of the game at Community Board 14 in general. And ensuring that youth do articulate or express what they'd like to get out of it so that we can either meet that need or manage that expectation.
Okay, Dwayne, anything from you? Anyone else have anything you want to contribute? I don't know, it's hard for me to monitor if the hands are raised, if anyone's raising their hands and I don't see it.
Yeah, we're helping you with that, Jonathan, and there aren't any now.
Okay, cool.
No, nothing on my end. I do agree with Nick. We can expand this beyond a project of just the youth council or the youth conference. You know, I think of a model of like a Generation Citizen that, you know, goes into high schools essentially and encourages young people to get involved and in their community by developing a project in itself that helps the community in some way, helps improve the quality of life for the residents in that community. So I fully support, you know, what Nikki's saying, in that we can definitely, especially having worked with young people now for a little bit and understanding that we don't have to limit them as much as we think we do. They are amazing when given the opportunity to like develop and grow. We just need to give them some slight parameters to work in so that they don't do anything crazy and we don't do anything crazy. But I think working beyond just the youth council will be a good, it'd be good.
I think you're breaking up a little bit.
You're breaking up a little, Dwayne. So all right. So while Dwayne does his John Cage show, can I suggest, can we talk about next steps? I mean, can I go through my notes and mock up what an application and run it by the Youth Services Committee and ask Nikki to take a close look at it too and see if we can just take that first step so we've got some forward momentum?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, before we just jump into that, there's a concern here that I sort of see, and I think we have to be cognizant of like what the parameters would be depending on one of the two options. I'm all in favor of a youth leadership council for the full community board. I do believe that in order to do that and to say that each committee is going to take on that responsibility, I do believe, just in all propriety, we would need to like wrap it up as a resolution and have the board adopt it. And I say that because I think we need to make sure that the full community board is buying into the concept and all the concerns and parameters are contemplated. Where's that coming from?
I'm sorry, everyone is muted. It sounds like Joseph. I'm sorry. Everyone
That's interesting, right?
Dwayne, you're not muted, though you appear to be muted.
Maybe now he's muted. Fingers crossed. Okay, we'll try this. Okay, so my concern is that if we're going to commit each committee of the community board we need like a fully written out program. I mean, we could sponsor it as the Youth Services Committee, but I think we need the full board to adopt something that says this is the program we're creating. And I know that sounds like legalese and
I
complicated
thought we
and
did that. I thought we did that when we had an all committees meeting back in the spring, and that,
but we never did but we never had a formal vote. It never came before the board at a regular meeting. And I say that only because if we're going to be asking that as part of the responsibility, I just think that the full community board should, at least by majority vote, weigh in, if not by unanimous consent, that this is something that we're all willing to commit to. But with that said, I think the substitute for the short term is I think we create the petri dish. We create the prototype. We could do it in-house, Youth Services Committee, Youth Leadership Council for the youth conference, with the opportunity that as that process unfolds, part of what we do is we encourage, at least under the Youth Services Committee umbrella, the teens that would be a part of it, or the young adults that are part of the council, to attend the other committee meetings, just like regular members of the community, and make it part of the program, but not make such a formal commitment on everyone else's behalf or ask of that until we see how it goes, maybe for one cycle, and see what that looks like. I think that makes it a little simpler. It gives us more flexibility, but it also doesn't ask other board members to commit to
but they
a certain
already,
role.
Jonathan, I'm sorry, but every board, every committee of this board has already expressed an interest in participating in this way. So, I mean, I think we can do both things at once, and at the February board meeting, it could be presented for a board resolution, and that's just a couple weeks
Well, that's
away.
fine. Yeah, I'm just saying, I think we need to have it all written out. I mean, I feel at this point, we should have a formal program drafted for review, so that way we could either just agree to it internally in the committee, or we can have the board actually adopt it to formalize it. So I think that's what our next steps are, is to get a written proposal, like this is what the program looks like, this is what it means, and this is what we want to have happen with it. I guess that's my point. I'm just giving the two options, and how, I guess, how aggressive upfront we are in expanding it board wide, or if we want to do it in like a smaller scale and see how it goes with the intention of ushering it to something larger.
Glenn Wolman has his hand up.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Hi. Yes, I just want to make a couple of quick statements. What Nikki and Jonathan were saying about how to deal with youth, I think is very valuable, very important, but it doesn't drill down into how to do those things. And what I'm more concerned about is how do we reach enough youth to get them interested in this, as opposed to getting the board to agree to it. I think we need to start off with a smaller program and see if we can actually get kids interested in participating. That's always been the most difficult part. And of course, part of getting them interested, once you have a dialogue with individuals, is, as Nikki stated, to make sure we don't oversell it. But the toughest part is the dialogue with the kids to get them on board. And until we have some way of doing that, the rest of the parliamentary things you're suggesting, Jonathan, don't seem to be that important. We need
Well, we
to
have
get
a
kids
youth
involved.
We've been doing for 13 years. I mean, we would have an audience of young people that have sincere interest in, learning, getting involved, building a career. I don't think we'll have a shortage of an audience. I think the audience is there. I do think we have a group. The question is, are we able to effectively pitch it so that they know what they're getting into? And then we're able to make sure that we're calibrating it to something that a core group of them would really want to be involved in. Now, again, I don't think that takes much effort. I agree with Sean that I think anything even as simple as just an application going up in the next few weeks and seeing who bites in the course of a month, because we do have a large list of young people and connections with so many groups and schools that could help get the word out. I think we could make that work. I don't think that has to be onerous. And I think the youth conference has proven that there's an audience of teens and young adults who would be very, I think, excited to get involved in something like this and would find value in it. I do think that's there. I think it's just sort of the question of, we just need to really formalize what the initial set of parameters are, so we're all on the same page about what we're going to do and what the commitments are from everybody to make that happen. That's all I'm suggesting.
Yes, and I hope you're right. Of course, it's unproven at this point. The only thing we know is that you have access to some number of kids out there, but in the past, it's about jobs. This is about a different level of joining and responsibility. And I'm hoping that you're correct, that there are in fact a group out there. But until we reach out to them and see what kind of response we get, we don't know.
Right, but that's why we should put something, as soon as we could be on the same page, I think we put something out immediately and we advertise it. Because the only way we're gonna know is if we put something out there for them to interact with.
Agreeing with that. So what I'm suggesting is that we need to have some type of a, I don't know if we can do it tonight, but a meeting to actually put on paper what it is we want to put out there for discussion. You know what I mean? The
I
specifics
think
you're talking about.
we need a draft, like maybe a 1 or 2 pager that says, here's what the Community Board 14 Youth Leadership Council is, and here's like who gets to join. And I know that Sean and Dwayne have talked about it, have a certain amount of that written up. I don't know if we have, I don't know if anything is.
I sent you an outline of something today. I don't know if you had a chance to review it, but
No,
let's
I did.
take a look at that and maybe we can flesh.
I did. So yeah, I don't know if that's something we can just share with everybody, or if we want to sort of talk it out, or I don't know if it makes sense to give people time to like read it and think about it too. I don't know if there's a way for us to share, maybe like
I
a
can send
link.
it out to the committee tomorrow because it's a Word document, and then it can be sort of or we can flesh it out a little bit more and then send it out as a Word doc for the next February meeting to move forward with, I guess.
And maybe we could get a couple of our committee members who really believe in this. Maybe we could get them to help draft that program and collaborate with us and you, Sean and Anya, as needed to put something together. So that way we have like one comprehensive sort of like, this is the program for the Youth Leadership Council. I don't know if we have any committee members here tonight that would be interested in doing that and taking the lead on that drafting part of the process, or contributing to that part of the process.
Hey, all, it's Dwayne. My apologies. My connection is really bad tonight. I don't know. I'm jumping back and forth. I'm hearing there's some concern about what the parameters of the program should be once the kids get started. But are we? And maybe I missed this in my jumping back and forth. The name of the application there.
I mean, I think we want to try something very quickly, see what happens. I think it's just, what is it that we're all going to put out there? The question is, what is that application going to say? How is it going to pitch the program? Then what are the implications on our end to do it? So that way we all have that clarity before we actually put it up. I mean, again, I don't think it has to be anything elaborate or complex. I mean, this is my view. I mean, we could all, discuss this and come to a consensus of any kind here. But I think just having like, this is the proposal, just something for all of us to review and go, yep, let's put an application out there with this. At least we have to have something like that for everyone to look at on the committee. I think that would be, that's what I would personally prefer.
Sean, since you've already kind of worked on that, is it possible we can share that with the board? What you sent out earlier today, framework of what we're looking to do, because I don't want to get bogged down. I personally wouldn't want the board and the youth service committee to get bogged down in minutiae. Discussing this for another month, like we should really try and start capturing these kids.
Nina has in the chat that she'd be interested in looking it over. And Nikki has her hand up. Glenn, your hand is still up. I don't know if that's still there again, but Nikki's hand is up.
Yeah, I just want to kind of repeat back what I think I'm hearing you guys say. Right, Sophie? We're going to repeat it back. The first thing is, like, I think there's two different, and again, I just want to make sure I'm hearing everybody correctly. I feel like there's two different models being discussed. One of them is that the entire board collaborates with the Youth Leadership Committee, right? And then Jonathan, I think it sounds like you're suggesting is a pilot model where only one committee of the board experiments with collaborating with the Youth Leadership Committee, and then we see how it goes, and then you would expand it to the rest of the committees, right? Does that sound like?
That's the other option that I was offering. I'm not saying that.
I would be so worried about that, just because it goes back against things that we've already had conversations with other committee co-chairs about, and that they've already expressed an interest in, from the Transportation Committee to the Public Safety Committee, Human Services, and ELCA. So, I mean, I just, I'll see if I can put the draft in the chat, but the idea is, because there's such a diversity of interest among the young people, that their community environment was another one where there seemed a really good, there's another, like, there's a Green Thumb project. The YLC, citywide YLC, already did a climate change event. So because that diversity of interest has already been expressed in the YLC world, I think it's important to start with a model that plugs any a youthful member of the community into the variety of the standing committees that we have, and to bring a youth perspective into each one of those committees.
Okay, I was just asking because I was having trouble figuring out, like, what were the two things on the table. So it sounds like there's two very distinct suggestions. I think my personal opinion is like, Sean, if you feel that all the other committees would be willing to give the kids the attention they would need if they participated, then I think it makes sense to have an application that is for the whole board, not just a pilot with the one committee. And the only other thing I wanted to say was in response to Glenn, and I will quote my grandmother, we should, there's like two problems we could have out of this. Either you could have no kids interested and we put an application out and nobody signs up, and oh my God, that would, nobody will die. So that's like, and then the second problem is, we have a billion kids and they're super interested and they get really angry when they can't change the world. And my grandmother would say we should be so lucky to have that problem. So for me, like, it's like either way, we really can't go wrong, right?
Your grandmother was
that's how I've been feeling. And if we have the first problem, and let's say we have this, like, only two young people become interested in this, and 2 people does not a committee make, we could always ask those 2 people if they wanted to be public members of whichever committee that grabs their attention. We don't lose anything.
And then maybe the next year there'll be 5. Maybe the year after there'll be 10. I mean, what's the worst case scenario? It doesn't happen overnight. Okay, well, most good things don't happen overnight.
Right. So. The youth conference didn't attract 700 people its first year.
No, did not. Definitely did not. I was there.
Jonathan, this is Anna. I wanted to add on something, and I hear you guys going back and forth on good ideas and great things, and the program that I'm part of already has a lot of it incorporated, and so I'll share quickly, if I may. So we're doing a couple different things. So I work for Grant Associates, and we do different types of contract work with New York City around workforce development. This specific contract, we're working with Department of Education, and we're working with youth. And this program has been around for 5 years. The last year, we transitioned to offer remote internships to students. So most immediately, we are working with youth all throughout New York City. We're working with high school students that are studying Korean technical education. So every district and every community most likely has a school that kind of falls within that realm. So there's definitely schools within your district that will be participating. So that's number one. So if you have nonprofit or for-profit business and interested in like set up extra help from high school seniors, we have an internship program to support with funding. We support students, we connect you with, all students get interviewed, they have a lot of great skills to share. So that's one part of what we do. The second part of what we do is workplace challenges, and this is something that was mentioned earlier today. So, and that's something that seems like could be a good fit for discussion for youth council that you're describing. We pull together a group of students. It would probably be around 20 students or so. It could be also a school participation, and the employer. We're working with different agencies as well. So right now we're working with police department, and they creating a similar type of programming. So they pulling the youth, they asking youth what's needed, they asking youth to do research, and we are supporting this project with funding. So students get paid for this experience. It's not a full-blown internship experience. Internship experience is 80 hours. Workplace challenge is 20 hours of work that students will be doing independently, connecting periodically with employer host or whatever the host is, and giving kind of guidance in how the project should be proceeding. And at the end, students will be presenting with a solution, PowerPoint deck or remote presentation. So, and we can talk separately and more in detail, like what that would look like and how can we pull the right community, but we can get at least 20 students, we can get more students. So it depends, kind of how you want to work this or what the needs of the program are. But, a lot of this type of work already exists, and the Department of Education is doing a lot of different elements. So I'm just representing TTE program, that's the program for Creative Technical Education students, but we can assist and help in kind of pushing this along and kind of helping guide the agenda, because that's something we've been working on developing, and there is a lot of flexibility and room in making it a very unique and specific experience to kind of the needs of the host workplace challenge sort of provider in that sense. So just wanted to leave you guys with that. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer. But Jonathan, if you feel like this could be a good conversation sort of outside of your immediate meeting, I left my contact information in the main chat, so feel free to reach out. But I'll stick around for a little bit if you guys have questions in operational elements or how we've done this or what was pulled together. So I'll be happy to offer more guidance here.
No, we appreciate what you shared with us, Anna, and I'm sure we will reach out, especially because one of the key things for our youth conference is a lot of what you were just describing is our programming like that. And I think it's very useful for us to sort of just keep in mind that other agencies are actually successfully finding youth for their youth leadership council. So there clearly is a hunger and an appetite, and maybe what we offer would be something more, it's generalized because it covers all sorts of aspects. It's not just police or homelessness or health or whatever, but it would be sort of general community well-being, and which covers so much more ground. But I think that is definitely helpful for us to consider in this conversation. So thank you for sharing that.
Awesome.
So look, I would like to just see something that we can look at in writing. That's just going to spell out at least what the parameters are for this. I don't disagree that I think we have consensus as a board to try it out from at least the key stakeholders. I just think we still need to just know exactly what that's going to look like. And that's the only thing that I would like to see before I could safely say, like, we should all sort of endorse it and move forward with it. That's the only thing. I don't care if we do pilot. I don't care if we do the whole board first. I do care that all the other committees and board members who could be potential co-chairs already or going to be future co-chairs, do they understand it? Do they actually understand what this is going to mean for them? I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, because if we're doing this, I want it to last like the youth conference lasted. And that's because we had that broad-based buy-in and everybody knew what it was, because we spent so much time the first year articulating that and then putting that out there for everyone. So I just want to make sure whatever we do, that we're doing it with that intentionality of getting everyone on the same page in mind. That's I feel like now's the time for us to put that together in writing. So I don't know any other thoughts or questions from any committee members. I mean, is everyone able to review the document that Anya just shared that Sean put together with the draft? Do we just want to take time to look at that, and then maybe we come back with a formal proposal to review at our next meeting on February 22nd, I believe it is? I mean, what's everyone's thoughts? And again, I don't want
It's a Google Doc. Can people take a look at it over the next coming days and then add anything to it from the Google Doc and send it back? It's a very rough draft. I really didn't intend it for it to be the jumping off point, but I think it's at least good enough to get started, and people can add right onto it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's when I read what you sent earlier, I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, this is definitely this definitely starts putting and fleshing out like what it is that we would do for this first pass. And I don't think if it waits till March, I don't think an application process starting in March is going to hold us back. I think that's perfectly fine. I think also there's just a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen with the pandemic. So we might have a lot more clarity about what the future may look like in the remainder of the year by that point. And that might change a lot of the dynamic, right? I mean, I think it'd be ideal for this not to be a Zoom WebEx experience if we can move past that at some point soon. So that's my
So,
John,
I mean, if I may interject a little bit, Jonathan, I mean, like the reality of it is, our youth conference will probably be virtual. We should anticipate planning it virtually, with the likelihood of it being in person, maybe. But I got to push back a little bit, just because I think as a committee we should be able to review this document, refine it, and get something going like in the next couple of weeks, maybe in the next 2 weeks. We've been kind of doing this for a year and a half now, having this discussion about the YLC, and I think we need to start moving this forward. Anticipating, I understand waiting until the next board meeting would be, great, but is there any way we can move this forward without having to wait until the next board meeting?
Well, Dwayne, maybe what the preliminary outreach can be do is a request for expressions of interest, kind of, and that, so anybody who expressed
Yes.
some interest, we're not saying you apply and you get on and bam, we have a youth council. We can just we can ask who's interested in this, and then ideally anybody who expressed interest can join that February 22nd conversation, and we might as well have youth input on the formation of a youth council if we're so lucky to spark that interest.
I
Sean?
want to jump in and say I totally agree with that. I think a smoke signal, say we are putting together a youth leadership council. More details to come, but we're looking for 14 to 21-year-olds who want to be directly involved in making a difference and learning about how community boards do that. Give us your name and your email and your zip code or whatever you want. And when we have those details, we'll announce it. And if you want to help shape that conversation, we have a meeting on February 22nd where you will be able to, as a teenager, young adult, come and partake in that conversation if you're interested. So give us the information so we can let you know about that meeting. That, I think, is a brilliant way to do it, to get the ball moving while we work out the details.
Yes.
Nina has a hand up.
Sean?
Okay, sorry, I didn't see.
And somebody else is shouting my name in the background. I guess it's Florencia.
Florencia, yeah.
Jonathan, I here, I'll put on my video. I completely agree that we've been talking about this for a long time. And I mean, what we've seen over the past year, certainly since the pandemic, there's a lot of restlessness. And my concern is that if we keep pushing this off and pushing it off, especially as March, and then it runs into April and whatever, then we pause for the summer unless we plan to have something else going, and there won't have been enough time to kind of get things established and get some momentum going and get young people involved in things that maybe they can carry through the summer to bring back in the fall, and it may leave us in September reconvening and being right back where we are tonight.
Well, I mean, we really only in earnest started this conversation in August or July, I think.
No, Jonathan, we had a meeting with co-chairs back in May.
Was it in May? Was it right before the recess? I remember we had it like right around, but it's only been about a half a year.
I'll go through our timeline when I send out another document to you, just so we have sort of our process pattern. I think Florencia was trying to say something there.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Florencia.
Is Sahid still on here? Because he works with the PACE, the Pakistani youth, and another youth group. So maybe, for those who work with youth groups, they can reach out to them. Monique Waterman also has a youth group, and they're pretty active. So maybe, to reach out to some of those in the meantime. Those organizations.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have a shortage of people to reach out to. I don't think it's going to be an issue with that. I mean, we've been cultivating it for at least 14 years now, really trying to find everybody. So those are good tips, though, Florencia. You're absolutely right. Again, I'm not saying we push this off interminably. I'm not saying we do that. I'm just saying that we get the details right, because we have these conversations, and you know, I think we're at the point where we're ready for something concrete, and that's all I'm saying is that we have something concrete. But more to the point, it's not like we wouldn't be doing anything, because I think at this point, I think we need to review the draft of what Sean has put together. I think we do need to come back and discuss that. I mean, if we want to try to call another meeting of the Youth Services Committee in the next 2 weeks, we just have to meet open meetings law requirements and publicize it in advance. If that's something we could do, then maybe we could do that to expedite it. But we would require the normal public notification process. So I think rushing the meeting and coordinating it might not necessarily be the best
The
move for us.
February calendar is already out, Jonathan. It went out today.
Right, no, I'm saying, right, we'd have to do something very, very special to rush it through, which I'm not endorsing that. I don't think it's necessary to do that. But it is an option, but of course we all have to agree that that's the option we must take here. I don't think we have to take that option. And so just getting to something concrete for us to review, I think what Sean has done and all the work that certainly Sean has put into researching it and getting a lot of this sorted out, and Dwayne and all of us who've been working on this, I think it's time that we, put something concrete, because that's what it deserves now. It deserves something concrete for us to publicize, to get young people and others, community stakeholders involved, and know what it means that Community Board 14, after the youth conference, is now putting together a Youth Leadership Council. So, and with that said, I don't want us to lose sight that the Youth Leadership Council, though it has not been formed yet because we are finalizing the details for review and approval, we still have a youth conference. And that is definitely doing something. That doesn't remove any of the momentum that we've been building for the last 14 years, though it's a one-day event a year. So I think if we could come to a consensus at this point that we're going to flesh out a document for us to review, that if we could do the smoke signal sign up form, hey, we're starting a Youth Leadership Council, more details to come, but if you're interested, give us your information. We'll send you more information once it's ready. I like that idea personally. I think if we could have something concrete to review by the 22nd, so that way we could have the board review it as a whole at the March meeting, having already collected and started to reach out to some youth that are interested in the Youth Leadership Council in the interim. I think that that's a perfectly fine timeline. And so I'd like to, and Dwayne, of course, push back as you wish, try to get consensus on wrapping this topic up, because we do need to decide some of the key parameters for the 2021 CB14 Youth Conference before we wrap up this meeting, I think, or at least decide if we're going to put it off to the 22nd February meeting. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Dwayne?
I'm certainly okay with it. My concern was just that we should be starting to reach out and cast the net now and collect the young people's information. We can, certainly look at finalizing something more concrete, but I think we should start reaching out to the young people and start building that base as much as we can. So that was my concern. I didn't want to not reach out to these young people sooner rather than later. I wanted to try and start getting them kind of building the base. So I'm okay with that suggestion, as long as we're reaching out. Whatever smoke signal application we can get up, let's get it up and just start collecting some of that information.
Sounds good. Nina, Nikki, and Glenn all have hands up.
Okay, let's see, Nina. Okay. Or maybe Nikki? Who's next? I'm sorry.
Nina.
Well, Nina, was your hand up from before, or did you raise it again?
No, yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot to put it down before. I just put it down.
Cool. Very good. Thank you, Nina. Okay, Nikki, then you're up next.
With all due respect, I still think we might be overthinking this a little bit. I feel like what we're going to do is we'll have an application, but then we won't actually meet the kids till March. And then, what if they don't show up and then we do it? I just feel like sorry, Sean?
No, we hear you.
Oh, okay. No, I saw Sean talking and I thought.
No, you're good. You're good, Nikki.
No, I just, even on this side, wrote down, and I can insert it into the Google Docs. Jonathan, I think what you're asking for, again, I work with kids who go on programs, right? And what we're talking about is the program. And I think you could, I wrote, just while you guys were talking, a program description for what the CB14 Youth Leadership Council will be. I can put it into the chat, even if you could read it, but the program description would be that you have 2 meetings a month, you get to meet the president, you have an assigned buddy, and it's an amazing opportunity to meet leaders of city government. And that's the program description. And like, so I don't really understand why we're making this so complicated or why there's such hesitancy. I think you could literally just add that to the application document that Sean already started and put that out there. And if you try that, and if that doesn't work, then you can get youth leadership on that program. Was that an interesting program for a youth leadership committee? But I just feel like we're making this more complicated than it needs to be.
The way I'm hearing it though is Jonathan was sort of outlining it and maybe didn't go into enough or as much detail as I sort of think we can do kind of both things at once. We can put a more fleshed out program description out there. And I think the only thing I'm feeling is different from the way I walked into this meeting wanting to just go ahead and jump off the cliff to what we're talking about doing is just having this, not waiting until March, but bringing the young people who express interest right away into that February 22nd conversation.
Right.
So I think it's a fine sort of middle, straight down the middle approach. It's not as fast as I was thinking we would, but it's not as slow as waiting till March to do anything either.
Correct. Right. This is only to bring everybody together to get all, like, again, Nikki, your program sketch, it commits the chairman of the board to something and to the office organizing 2 additional meetings a month. Those are the things I want everyone to just be on the same page about. Like, yep, we are all into that particular version of it. And particularly if we're going to send out the smoke signal and start getting interested young people, young adults, to partake in that conversation and join us on the February 22nd meeting to tell us, do they want 2 meetings a month? What do they want? And weigh in on that. So that way, not only we've already started doing outreach, we've floated the concept, we're getting people to bite, we're also making sure that whatever we're promising that we're going to do, we are not only both committed to doing, but we're capable of doing, and the young people who would be serving want to do. And saying that by the March meeting, that we will have all those ducks in a row, given that that's only like at this point 5 weeks out, I think that's actually pretty good. That's how I personally feel. So I don't think it takes away from any of the things or the concerns that you're bringing up, Nikki, or anybody else who wants to just get it moving forward. I think I just like that process makes more sense for a successful experience all around. That's how I'm trying to push for it in that way. And I like what we're hearing because I feel like that's all going to get us there.
Okay, am I up?
Yep, go ahead, Glenn.
All right. I agree with Dwayne. I'd really like to see this moving. I read through what Sean's draft, which I think is an excellent draft, but we need to have a meeting to flush it out. So, for example, she talks about interviews. Well, who's going to do the interviews? Or talks about how possibly have the youth set up their own independent meetings. Well, how do we do that? It's a really good start, and I like what she did. But we need to meet to figure out exactly how we do the individual steps. And I'd like to see that happen as soon as possible. Okay, I'm done.
And so that's what we're going to do, Glenn, all the way through to the February 22nd meeting. We'll float the concept to see what young people, young adults, 14 to 21, from the community district, who would like to be involved in that, because I know we will find a handful of ambitious young people who want to do that. And we will finalize those details by the February 22nd meeting. And that'll be the key item on that agenda, is to finalize it so that way that's what we get to share with the world to address that point. Because your concerns on that end are also the concerns that I have. And I just want buy-in. I just want everybody to say, yep, we are committed to doing it this way. And we're all in to make this a success for Community Board 14 and for the community and the young people of our community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Any other comments, questions, concerns, statements about this particular phase of it, of our agenda?
Youth conference.
Yes. Okay, so good. We've closed it out. We know what we're doing for the council. Youth conference. Dwayne, actually, well, hold on. No, I think it was Dwayne. Dwayne, I know you had some specific opinions and thoughts about how to proceed. I wanted to turn it over to you if you're here with us. So.
Well, I mean, for the youth conference, the primary thing is like looking at it from the perspective, like we're used to doing an in-person youth conference. We were fortunate last year that we were able to get our youth conference in at the very, very last minute, because I think while we were in the middle of our youth conference, Brooklyn College or CUNY had made the announcement to close down its campuses.
It was the day after. It was the day after we had.
Was the day after? Okay.
Yeah. It was in New York. We wouldn't have had it if it was the same day.
So I just want to I'm looking from the perspective of let's consider what our youth conference would look like virtually this year. I know it would be great if we could have it in person, but given the way things are playing out right now, I don't anticipate we'll be able to do that, at least in a socially distanced, responsible way. So let's look at what that can look like virtually. The way I'm seeing it right now is let's consider, breakout rooms, panel discussions virtually. We can still try and get as many of our previous commercial participants and nonprofit participants involved and engaged, but I think we really need to look hardcore at what something like this would look like virtually. So, I mean, that's where I am right now on this, my personal position.
I think that was also in my notes because that's in that same YLC document. As you go down, it gets to a youth conference.
Yes.
And I do want to ask that we settle on this being planned as a virtual conference, because there's no way this office that consists of just the two of us right now can plan both, and I'm just concerned about using capacity to plan something that could fall through. So before we sign off tonight, I just want to make sure that that we're committed to a remote conference, and if not, then that's going to be maybe a longer conversation.
Just co-chair prerogative. Totally fine with doing it virtually this year, because I think it'll guarantee it'll happen. But also, I'm a little curious exactly what will happen, because I wonder if there is a possibly better advantage to doing it virtually for some of the experiences in the conference. So I'm curious to see what it looks like and what kind of impact that might have. So out of just idle curiosity, I'd like to see how we can do a youth conference virtually. That's my preference.
Our board meetings and our committee meetings tend to be better attended online than they were in person. Anya did some research on some platforms that actually, or companies, organizations that actually do online conferencing. So we might be able to tap into expertise that already exists. I kind of had just a very quick outline again that is in that document. I believe the document that was attached tonight.
I see it.
The idea that we would have tabling could be a quick sort of a round table of, this is how we did nonprofit roundtable, and we'll have to curate a little bit this year, because I don't know that we can have 80 people doing this, but the tabling portion could just be the first part where organizations and agencies have a small number of minutes to just who they are, what services they provide, to whom, and what their contact is. And that can all go in a chat or something like that. And then there'll be breakout sessions. And if we get one of these fancy outfits to run this for us, you could have 2 or 3 or 4 sort of presentations going on at any one time. And if they repeated themselves, 2 or 3 times, then a young person could say they're going to the DYCD one at 3 o'clock, and then at 3:45 they're going to do this other, and then at 5 o'clock do this other. So you can, just like a real conference works, you pick out which sessions you want to attend. You have more than one opportunity during the day to get into that session, and so that's just sort of my very broad outline or skeleton outline for how an online one could work. And then if we have even a nascent youth group, I thought at the end, they could do a real-time feedback loop on the conference and what they got out of it, and sharing their experiences in these conference rooms, whether or not they brainstorm some ideas of what they want to carry back to CB14 in terms of something to work on or advocate for. You know, we have the momentum, and we have them sort of in the screen room right then and there to do that.
Can I add one little comment as well, Jonathan? Hi. I also wanted to say I'm excited about the idea that this would then also live on as an archive, the way that our meetings do. So it'll be that all-around, year-round sort of resource we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, I mean, we could record all of it. There'd be no reason that you couldn't keep going back to the youth conference, or whenever you didn't get to participate in a live conversation, you could at least watch the one that happened, which is actually a better version in some regards than the in-person, right? It's an advantage over the in-person experience, right? Which can be very limited that way. Totally excellent point. Yep.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Okay, so normally at this phase, when we talk about youth conference planning, we usually just try to do like the date range, like, you know, what weeks are we looking at? I do think that though we've been able to turn around, I am still shocked at how Sean and Anya, and of course when Irina was still in the office, that in 6 weeks, successful youth conferences got turned around. I don't believe that that's still, I think there was magic involved. I don't know if like leprechauns were paid off. I don't know how that happened. I don't know what magic happened, but it happened and they were fantastic. So I have to commend the office for just really making sure that programming wise, every I was dotted, T was crossed, and those events happened like clockwork. So thank you, Sean and Anya, for all the years that you've made that happen. I'm still stunned.
Just full disclosure, it's really just, it's Anya Magical Hoyer who really put it all together. I would beg for a little extra time this year because it's unknown territory, and because we don't have to break a sweat meeting an SYEP deadline. And also, full disclosure again, there is a nonprofit roundtable that is going to happen hopefully in the fairly near future, because the co-chairs of that committee are concerned about getting COVID vaccination information out from trusted, reliable messengers in the nonprofit world. So yeah, could we not plan it for 6 weeks from now?
Yeah, I'm cool with that too. I agree.
And I'm wondering, honestly, if April, May, what the board feels and what Anya feels, because I haven't even talked about it with you, I don't think, Anya, but what everyone here feels about it, like an April, May idea.
I'll open it up. Anyone, if you want to raise your hand, and we'll acknowledge you and give your feedback on that.
Well, I will jump in just to say I think that's great. We used to, in the beginning, in my experience with this, we used to host the events more April, May, because students are nearing the end of the year. They're thinking about summer. And the only reason we pushed it up was because of the BYCD deadline. So given that we don't have that early date here, I'm in complete agreement. I think that the kids are already a little more tuned into thinking about summer at that point as well. So I think it's a good idea.
And to your earlier point, Jonathan, if certain things are opening up in the summer and we're being, we're closer to the light at the end of that tunnel, that might actually situate some of the offerings differently too.
Agreed. Because even still, there's going to be still transitions for us as a city. Things aren't going to be quite what they used to be. It's going to take time for that to come back, I think. I think just because life is slow that way, even when we don't want it to be slow, it can be slow. But I do think that new opportunities will be able to come up. And even if there's some sort of like modified SYEP, if there's some other programs that are opening up because of this concern about post-pandemic summer life, what will kids do? What are the opportunities for them? I do think there'll be more clarity. There'll be more figured out by then than right now. When right now we're just trying to vaccinate people. Quite frankly, at that point, I think a lot of people who are not in those higher risk groups are going to be eligible, fingers crossed, that the vaccine production will go according to plan. But people, like a good amount of us here on this call, will then finally be eligible for the vaccine. And so it might be an opportunity too to remind sort of younger people who are just as likely potentially to be severely affected by COVID, to remind them about getting vaccinated when probably is closer to when they'll be able to get the vaccine. So that's also an advantage of doing it later in the year.
I
I'm
think,
fine with May. I'm fine with sometime in May, personally. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. me too.
So it sounds like we have consensus on looking at a date in May. April better, or I'm cool with May. So
I'll look around holidays and stuff like that. I don't have that in calendar in front of me, so I'll try to, ensure that we're sandwiched nicely in between religious holidays and school holidays insofar as they still exist and all of that. And we'll come up with we'll nail down dates for the February 22nd meeting. We can pull one out of a hat of what looks reasonable. I think we could also maybe all take a little bit of time to look the youth services, the youth conference tab, or the youth conference website that exists, and kind of look through, just refresh our own memories on some of the organizations that have been involved in the past, to figure out, if we are going to have to curate participants, who we think is good, and just thinking about topics. Different organizations might seem more valuable now in the world as as it exists now than they were before. Oh, good, I'm getting holidays up in the chat. Yeah, if everybody could kind of do a little bit of homework on what they think seems even better now than it was before, given the constraints in our society.
yeah, I think also too, because this is a longer horizon, that we're talking about this now, it is January 25th, and we're looking at maybe in May. One of the problems we've had in the past, and this has always been a problem for us, is that some of the larger potential participants, like let's say banks or Target, or other larger companies that might have opportunities for jobs and other type of work, paying opportunities, they require like 3-4 months lead time. So the advantage to saying right now that we're looking at May, maybe for those of you who are here and have done this with us before, maybe put out your feelers like, hey, we're doing something in May. Are you continuing any programs for teens or young adults? And what would it take for you to maybe partake in hosting some segment or being a presence to have a conversation with those who might want to talk about those opportunities for our youth conference, since it's 3-4 months out from now? Like, just to start the conversations now, because that's always the problem with some of the larger entities, that they need like months of advance notice for just to have a person show up. So let's take advantage of that if we can. Okay. Any other questions or concerns about? I think we have consensus. We're going to plan it being virtual. If for some reason we could have done it differently, we'll say la vie. We'll do it virtual this year anyway. That's how I feel. But we're in consensus about virtual, and we're going to aim for a date in May. And by the February 22nd meeting, in addition to reviewing a concrete plan for the Youth Leadership Council program document and reviewing that and finalizing that, we will have a definitive date for the youth conference for 2021. And we will start discussing sort of who might be some of those like key participants in this year's youth conference in a virtual format. Does that sum it up, I think, nicely? Oh, thank you, Sean.
Sounds like it does.
Anything to add, yeah. Sorry, Drain, did you say something, or did I?
No, I said that sums it up just fine. And Sean is a lot faster typing than I am talking right now.
That's fine. That's fine. All right. Any other questions, comments before we wrap up? I don't know if we have any other. Go ahead, Drain.
I just wanted to, because we did acknowledge Katie Carroll joining us earlier in the call, and she's been very gracious staying through the entire thing. I wanted to just give her an opportunity to just introduce herself to the entire group and say something very quickly if she could.
Absolutely.
Or if she was open to it.
I'm all in favor. Go if Katie wants to do it.
Of course, yeah. Sorry. Hi, y'all. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been really a great experience hearing all of your ideas and thinking through this process with you. I work for an after-school program called America Scores New York. I'm the Brooklyn program manager, so I've been connected with Sean. And part of our program is civic engagement. So we have a youth council that we've had for about 2 years now. And a lot of the ideas that y'all are talking about, we've gone through, and we have youth from kindergarten up through high school in different parts of the city that are at different stages. So I would love to help in whatever capacity y'all need, and offer any guidance and get my students involved, because a lot of them are really awesome and benefit greatly from the opportunities you guys are suggesting. So thank you again. I'd love to talk to anyone offline. If you want, I can put my information in the chat. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Katie. As they say, we leave the best for last. That's what we're supposed to do. And I think what you just said, we would love your insight and advice, because as you can see, this is new for us, and we could use your expertise that you're so very generously offering. So yes, please come back to us and tell us how we can make it better from your experience, and we'd love to have you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Katie. All right, any other hands, or I don't know, I think I just goofed on something, right? Where am I? Now I'm back. Okay. Anybody else before we wrap up?
I just missed the name of the organization that Katie represents. I got America something New York.
Of course. Sorry, Nina. It's America Scores New York. So I don't know. It's probably backwards. So I don't know how helpful this is, but
No,
I can
that's
put it in
right.
the chat.
You look exactly right. It's perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anya's been very kind. She just dropped the link in the chat, everyone. So just
Even better. All right. Anybody else before we adjourn?
I just have one request of Andy. I see you're still here, Andy. You mentioned a lot of the youth programs of different city agencies. Would you be so kind as to share that list with the board so we can kind of get that up on our board website? So, because as we reach out to the young people, I would love to be able to point them to, somewhere on the board site where they can learn about the different youth programs that city agencies offer.
We'll do. I'll get that to Sean.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Terrific. Okay. Anybody else? Last call.
Thank you all very, very much. Appreciate all the input and support, and I'm excited about what's ahead for this committee.
Sounds good. All right.
All right. So, motion to adjourn?
Yep, seconded. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for all your passionate views and takes on all this, and look forward to working with you all on this going forward, especially at our February 22nd meeting. So stay tuned.
Keep up the good work, Jonathan, Dwayne. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Glenn.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Thank you, guys. Thank
Have a
you,
good night.
guys.
Great
Good
meeting.
night, everyone.